You've been at war your entire life, yet never recognized the battlefield. Every morning, you wake to invisible forces pulling at your attention. Notifications demand response. Headlines provoke outrage. Markets induce anxiety. And in this storm of stimuli, you react, as you were designed to do. This is not coincidence. This is architecture. 5 centuries ago, Niccolo Machiavelli wrote his infamous treatise on power while exiled from Florence, a man watching the mechanisms of control from painful distance. What he observed then remains true today. Psychological dominance precedes all other forms of power. The masses believe conflicts occur on visible planes: elections, markets, social media debates. But these are merely shadows cast by the true war, the battle for your reactions, for your emotional sovereignty. Look around you, the faces illuminated by screens, the furrowed brows scanning headlines, the anxious glances at investment portfolios, each person believing they act from free will, unaware they respond to carefully engineered stimuli. The wealthy know something you don't. Emotion is expensive. Reaction is a luxury only the powerless can afford. While you exhaust yourself in righteous outrage, strategic fear, or social indignation, someone watches, noting every predictable response. Your emotional patterns become the map by which others navigate around your defenses. And in that reactivity, your power dissolves. But there exists another way of being. Consider the investor who buys when markets bleed red, the negotiator who remains silent when insulted, the strategist who allows opponents to exhaust themselves in emotional display. These aren't simply disciplined individuals. They are practitioners of Machiavellian calm, the recognition that psychological warfare isn't something that happens to you, but through you. What if your reactions aren't personal failings but targeted extraction points? What if your anger, fear, and desire aren't autonomous responses, but carefully cultivated harvest zones designed to separate you from strategic thought? The first principle of Machiavellian power isn't forcing others to do your bidding, it's preventing others from forcing you into predictable patterns. True power begins not with controlling others, but with becoming uncontrollable yourself. This is the invisible battlefield, the space between stimulus and response, the territory where fortunes quietly change hands, where influence silently transfers, where the defeated never realize they were even fighting. The calm observer sees what the reactive participant never can: patterns, systems, design. Your devices aren't tools, they're targeting mechanisms. Your media isn't information, it's emotional manipulation. Your social platforms aren't connections, they're behavioral conditioning experiments. And in this understanding comes the first awakening. The Machiavellian mind doesn't resist these systems through force of will. That would be another form of reaction, predictable, exhausting, futile. Instead, it steps outside the engineered response, observing the machinery with cold precision, asking, who benefits from my reaction here? What pattern am I being guided to follow? What strategic advantage am I surrendering through emotional response? This isn't detachment, it's sovereignty. The powerful remain calm, not because they feel nothing, but because they understand everything, including the deliberate engineering of their emotional landscape. Consider how oddly predictable human behavior becomes at scale. Markets cycle between greed and fear. Politics oscillates between hope and outrage. Social media transforms from connection to addiction. These aren't accidents of human nature. They're architectural features of systems designed to harvest predictable reactions. The prince who rules effectively never allows himself to become the puppet of his own emotions. Machiavelli understood what modern power structures depend upon. Reactive beings can be controlled through emotional design. The architecture isn't hidden. It surrounds you, transparent in its effectiveness, because few pause to examine its purpose. Watch how financial systems manufacture urgency. Tickers scroll in real time. Notifications ping portfolio changes. Experts warn of imminent collapse or unprecedented opportunity, all designed to compress decision-making time, forcing action before reflection. The strategic mind asks, who benefits from my rapid reaction? Who profits from my fear? Who harvests when I act without full information? The media ecosystem operates through similar mechanics. Breaking news doesn't break because it's important. It breaks because broken attention is profitable. Outrage isn't covered because it's informative. It's covered because angry viewers don't change channels. The architecture exploits attentional vulnerabilities, creating the sensation of emergency without the substance of crisis. And this machinery grinds forward day after day. But look closer at those who maintain wealth and power across generations. They don't frantically respond to headlines. They don't panic sell investments. They don't rage against algorithmic provocations. Instead, they maintain psychological distance, not from information, but from the emotional manipulation embedded within its delivery. They understand the difference between being informed and being influenced. The architecture of reaction isn't designed to inform you, but to condition you. Each time you react predictably, you surrender strategic advantage. Your patterns become visible, your triggers become known, your behavior becomes anticipatable, and in that predictability, you become controllable. The masses remain trapped because they interpret their reactions as natural, inevitable, even virtuous. The angry citizen believes their outrage demonstrates moral clarity. The anxious investor believes their fear shows prudent caution. The status-conscious consumer believes their desire signals aspirational drive. None recognize these as manufactured responses serving interests beyond their own. Here's the part no one dares admit. These emotional reactions feel authentic precisely because they're expertly engineered. The architecture doesn't create your emotions. It identifies pre-existing psychological vulnerabilities and systematically exploits them at scale. Your fear isn't invented, it's amplified. Your outrage isn't fabricated, it's directed. Your desire isn't implanted, it's channeled. The Machiavellian mind understands this design not to manipulate others, but to prevent being manipulated itself. It recognizes that emotional responses aren't signs of authentic engagement, but strategic vulnerabilities in a system designed for psychological harvesting. This recognition creates a profound shift. You begin seeing emotional reactions not as personal experiences, but as structural outcomes, not as who you are, but as how you're being played. And in that distinction lies freedom. The wealthy have learned to experience provocative information without surrendering their strategic positioning. They absorb market data without panic. They process political developments without rage. They consider social signaling without insecurity. This isn't emotional repression. It's emotional sovereignty, the ability to experience feelings without being controlled by them, to recognize manipulation without surrendering to it, to maintain strategic clarity when others descend into reactive fog. The architecture of reaction depends on one critical vulnerability: your belief that your responses are freely chosen rather than expertly cultivated. Once you recognize the design, you can never unsee it. And in that recognition, you gain the first true advantage in this invisible war. History whispers a secret that few have ears to hear. The most powerful figures rarely displayed their power through emotional force, but through calculated restraint. It is better to be feared than love. Ed, if you cannot be both. Machiavelli's famous observation isn't about cruelty, it's about strategic consistency. Emotions fluctuate, strategy persists. Love fades when interests conflict. Respect endures when boundaries remain clear. This isn't mere stoicism, it's strategic sovereignty. Consider the investor who bought when markets collapsed in 2008, the leader who made unpopular decisions during crisis, the negotiator who maintained silence when opponents grew agitated. Each demonstrates the same principle. Power flows toward those who maintain strategic clarity when others surrender to emotional turbulence. The Machiavellian mind understands a fundamental truth. When you react emotionally, you broadcast your psychological triggers to those observing you. Each reaction is a signal revealing exactly how you can be manipulated in the future. Anger shows what threatens you. Fear reveals what controls you. Desire exposes what captures you. Each emotional display becomes a strategic liability in environments where others maintain observational calm. And yet the social world rewards emotional expression, authenticity, vulnerability, passion. These values aren't inherently flawed. They build connection, trust, community, but they become dangerous when deployed in contexts designed for competitive advantage rather than collaborative growth. Here's the darker truth. Emotional transparency is a privilege reserved for environments of mutual safety, not strategic landscapes where power transfers through psychological leverage. The truly powerful cultivate what appears to be coldness, but is actually clarity, the capacity to experience provocations without surrendering control of their response. They recognize emotional reactions as luxury goods they cannot afford in contexts where strategic positioning determines outcomes. This doesn't mean feeling nothing. It means deciding which feelings deserve expression and which require containment. It means recognizing when emotional display serves your strategic interests and when it undermines them. The masses mistake emotional reaction for authentic engagement. They believe their rage demonstrates commitment, their anxiety shows diligence, their desire proves ambition. Yet each reaction pulls them further from the observational clarity required for strategic positioning. Systems of social control depend on emotional contagion, the transmission of feelings that override strategic thought. Watch how markets, media, and politics manufacture collective emotion. Fear driving sell-offs, outrage fueling engagement, desire powering consumption. Each creates predictable behavior that serves interests beyond those experiencing the emotion. The Machiavellian mind doesn't ignore these emotional currents. It studies them, understanding their utility as information rather than experiencing them as compulsion. It asks, what behaviors does this emotional climate encourage? Who benefits from collective reaction? What opportunities emerge for those who maintain strategic clarity? This perspective transforms emotional distance from social liability to strategic asset. Non-reaction becomes the ultimate form of power, not because you feel nothing, but because you decide which feelings deserve your strategic attention. You experience the full spectrum of human emotion while recognizing which responses serve your positioning and which serve others. And in this discrimination lies true sovereignty. The wealthy don't suppress emotion. They subordinate it to strategy. They don't deny feelings. They deploy them selectively. They don't avoid emotional information. They prevent emotional override of strategic thinking. This capacity creates asymmetric advantage in every domain where outcomes depend on psychological positioning rather than material resources. In negotiations, relationships, investments, conflicts, the strategically sovereign mind maintains freedom of action while others become prisoners of their predictable emotional patterns. The most profound Machiavellian insight isn't about manipulating others' emotions, but about mastering your own, not through suppression, but through strategic selectivity. Through recognizing that in a world engineered for reaction, non-reaction becomes the ultimate form of power. Time moves differently for the powerful. Watch them closely. While masses rush between commitments, while markets demand immediate action, while media screams for instant attention, those with true strategic advantage operate at measured pace. They recognize what Machiavelli understood centuries ago. The appearance of necessity is the most powerful tool of those who would control others. Urgency is the primary weapon in modern psychological warfare. Look at your own experience. How often do you make poor decisions under the pressure of artificial deadlines? How frequently do you surrender strategic positioning because there isn't time to consider alternatives? How commonly do you react rather than respond because delay feels impossible? The illusion of urgency short-circuits rational thought. It bypasses strategic consideration. It manufactures necessity where none exists. and it serves interests beyond your own. Financial markets create artificial time pressure through real-time data, limited time opportunities, and expiring options. Media outlets transform routine developments into breaking emergencies requiring immediate attention. Social platforms reward rapid engagement over thoughtful consideration. Each system manufactures the sensation that now is the only moment that matters. This temporal compression serves a purpose. It prevents the strategic thinking that might reveal the manipulation itself. Consider how differently the wealthy approach time. They invest across decades, while others trade across days. They build reputations over years, while others chase viral moments. They cultivate relationships across lifetimes, while others network across events. This extended temporal perspective isn't merely philosophical, it's strategic. Those with power understand that most urgent situations are precisely when one should slow down, creating advantage through deliberate analysis, while others rush toward predictable outcome. Xiaomi's. Here's what they recognize. Genuine emergencies requiring immediate response are vanishingly rare. Most urgency is manufactured to benefit those who remain unhurried, creating arbitrage opportunities between your compressed decision-making and their expanded strategic perspective. The Machiavellian mind doesn't resist urgency through willpower. It bypasses it entirely through perspective, understanding that time itself is a strategic resource that others would steal through artificial acceleration. This isn't about moving slowly, it's about choosing your tempo rather than surrendering to externally imposed rhythms. It's recognizing when speed serves your positioning and when patience creates advantage. It's maintaining chronological sovereignty when systems demand chronological surrender. The masses mistake activity for progress, confusing motion with advancement. They rush between commitments, respond to notifications, chase opportunities, all while falling further behind those who move with deliberate intention rather than manufactured urgency. And yet the illusion persists. Each limited time offer creates the sensation of scarcity. Each breaking news alert manufactures emergency. Each trending topic implies mandatory attention. The architecture of modern life depends on your belief that now is always the critical moment requiring immediate response. The strategic mind questions every instance of urgency. Who benefits from my rapid reaction here? What advantage am I surrendering by compressing my decision time? What might become visible if I extended my temporal perspective? This questioning creates space between stimulus and response, the territory where strategic advantage emerges. The wealthy don't ignore time constraints, they verify them. They don't reject deadlines, they assess their legitimacy. They don't dismiss urgency, they determine its authenticity. And in this discrimination, they maintain freedom of action, while others become trapped in artificial temporal constraints. Time itself becomes asymmetric, expanding for those with strategic sovereignty and compressing for those caught in reactive patterns. The same objective mind contains different decision space depending on your relationship to manufactured urgency. And in that expanded space, possibilities emerge that remain invisible to those operating under constant temporal pressure. The Machiavellian insight isn't about slowing down, but about reclaiming chronological sovereignty, the capacity to determine which situations truly require immediate response and which offer advantage through strategic patience. In a world engineered to accelerate decision-making beyond the threshold of strategic thought, maintaining your own tempo becomes the ultimate expression of power. The final understanding arrives quietly. There is no escape. The systems of psychological influence, financial markets, media narratives, social hierarchies, political structures, these aren't temporary impositions from which you might one day break free. They are the water in which you swim, the air you breathe, the gravity shaping your movement through. Social space. The wise ruler studies the nature of rivers not to stop their flow, but to direct it toward his purpose. Machiavelli's wisdom emerges in full clarity. The goal is not to escape these systems of influence, but to understand them so thoroughly that you can navigate them with deliberate choice rather than reactive pattern. This is the ultimate Machiavellian calm, not the absence of turbulence, but the capacity to move within it strategically. The truly sovereign mind doesn't waste energy fighting against reality's construction. It accepts the rules of the game while playing at a level others don't recognize exists. It understands that financial systems will continue their cycles, social hierarchies will maintain their structures, media narratives will shape perception. But it observes these not as environmental truths, but as constructed mechanisms. This perspective transforms your relationship to power entirely. You stop seeing wealth as merely having more resources and recognize it as operating from fundamentally different psychological frameworks. The rich don't simply have more, they interact with systems differently, maintaining strategic clarity precisely when others cannot, creating asymmetric advantage through psychological positioning rather than material force. You begin noticing the spaces between stimulus and response, the territories where true power flows. You recognize moments of manufactured urgency as opportunities for strategic patience. You observe emotional contagion as information rather than imperative. You maintain chronological sovereignty when temporal compression threatens strategic thought. And in this observation, your relationship to the social world transforms. You no longer experience systems of influence as environmental forces beyond control, but as constructed mechanisms you can navigate with increasing sovereignty. You stop fighting against conditions that cannot change and start positioning strategically within the reality that exists. This isn't resignation, it's reconnaissance. The Machiavellian mind studies systems not to escape them, but to leverage them. It observes patterns not to break them, but to position within them. It recognizes manipulation not to resist it, but to navigate it with strategic intention. This perspective creates a profound calm, not because the world becomes less turbulent, but because you stop experiencing its turbulence as personal assault. You recognize that markets don't fall to harm you, they oscillate by design. Media doesn't provoke to target you, it harvests attention through predictable mechanisms. Status hierarchies don't exist to exclude you, they function as sorting systems serving interests beyond individual participants. And in this recognition, reactivity dissolves. You maintain emotional experiences without emotional override. You process information without manufactured urgency. You interact with systems without surrendering strategic positioning. You navigate social spaces without becoming captive to their psychological demands. This isn't detachment from reality. It's engagement with reality as it actually exists, rather that, and as it presents itself through manipulated perception. The final Machiavellian insight arrives with quiet force. In a world designed to provoke reaction, your most valuable possession is not wealth or status, but the sovereign capacity to choose your response when all others are simply reacting to the engineered environment around them. This sovereignty doesn't guarantee material success. It doesn't promise social dominance. It doesn't ensure financial wealth. But it creates the precondition for all strategic advantage, the capacity to maintain observational clarity when others surrender to reactive patterns. The prince who rules effectively does so not through controlling others, but through remaining uncontrolled himself, maintaining strategic sovereignty precisely when others cannot, creating asymmetric advantage through psychological positioning rather than material force. And in that positioning, true power emerges, not as domination over others, but as sovereignty over self. You've journeyed through the invisible battlefield now, seen the architecture most never recognize, felt the weight of systems designed to harvest your reactions while rewarding your compliance. But you've also glimpsed something rarer, the possibility of sovereignty amid engineered chaos. This awareness changes how you move through the world, not as reactive participant, but as strategic observer, not as emotional target, but as sovereign mind. The Machiavellian calm isn't emotional coldness, it's clarity amid deliberate confusion, patience amid manufactured urgency, strategic positioning amid psychological manipulation. Few will ever see these mechanisms. Fewer still will maintain the discipline to navigate them. But those who do find themselves playing a different game entirely, one where reactive patterns become visible, where strategic possibilities emerge, where psychological sovereignty creates advantage no material resource can match. This journey doesn't end with this documentary. It begins with your next interaction, your next provocation, your next emotional trigger, your next encounter with systems designed for your predictable response. Stay with us. Keep watching. Keep thinking. Not because we offer answers, but because together we're developing the question: how to remain sovereign in a world engineered for surrender. Subscribe not for content, but for consciousness. Not for distraction, but for clarity. Not for answers, but for increasingly precise questions about the nature of power, perception, and strategic positioning. This isn't entertainment. It's reconnaissance. And in the psychological war that surrounds you, intelligence is the ultimate weapon, awareness the ultimate shield.